So, please welcome on the stage Dean from Agoric. Hi, Dean.
Hey,
Please
Dusan.
welcome Sergey, the founder of Axelar. And please welcome Jake from Juno.
Hey.
Hi, Sergey.
Hey, what's
Hi,
up?
Jake.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone.
So,
Can I insert something?
yeah,
There's
of
a lot
course.
of other leaders in the Cosmos space
Yeah.
out here, so thank you all. Anyway, go ahead.
So, yeah, please introduce yourself, guys, so everybody knows like who they have the
Sure,
pleasure with.
thank you. And thank you for having us here. Thank you for having me here, and thank you all for coming. I'm Dean Tribble. I'm CEO of Agoric, one of many zones in the Cosmos space, and we've done a lot of work building up a Cosmos-based blockchain, helping with the creation and rollout of Inter-Blockchain Communication Protocol, IBC, that is the thing that changes Cosmos from being a set of independent sovereign chains to being a set of independent sovereign chains that can cooperate in astonishing new ways. And so that's what we're here with.
Hey everyone. Yeah, great to be here. Thanks again for the invite. So I'm Sergey. I'm a co-founder of Axelar. So we're working on secure cross-chain communication, kind of extending, Cosmos with other ecosystems that don't speak IBC today, yeah, trying to transition everybody to a multi-chain and a cross-chain world in a secure way.
And I'm Jake. I'm part of Core 1 at Juno. Helped launch that. That was fun. Also work on this thing called DAO. I don't know if people have heard of DAO. It's next-gen interchain DAO tooling. And also a co-founder of Stargaze. So I work on too many things. But
Thank you for the introduction. So let's start with the first topic, which is the implication of the economic collapse on the protocol and on your protocol particularly and on the overall ecosystem. And I would like Sergey to start with his thoughts.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I think on the high level, so how kind of Axelar was related with Terra and the UST in particular is because we try to help them bridge in other ecosystems outside of Cosmos, right? So for those of you that don't know, kind of Axelar connects Cosmos with EVM chains, with Ethereum, like Moonbeam, Avalanche, Polkadot, Polkadot kind of through Moonbeam and a bunch of other chains. So we had about, I think, 35 million plus or minus of UST and Luna combined, kind of bridged across all of those ecosystems through the Axelar protocol. And essentially, I think what happened as the collapse started happening, of course, we saw a lot of people trying to rescue their funds. Some of them actually bridged them back to Ethereum, or more assets were bridged back to Ethereum, kind of swapped for USDC, right? Some people try to unwrap it, move it back to Terra. I think Terra was actually pretty clogged for some time, so people had definitely experienced delays. But I think yeah, what we've seen over the kind of few days is that most of that liquidity just sort of disappeared. I think there's about 1 million or 2 million that's left that was bridged out through Axelar. I think what has worked, quite well through our protocol is that when Terra chain was going down, because everything is connected through a centralized Axelar hub, we were successfully able to just pause the transfers through all of those ecosystems like in a consistent way, and then like let Terra do their thing, restart the chain, then we opened the transfers again, then Terra went down again, then we closed it again. So I think what really worked and what kind of to me demonstrated a big benefit of just having like a hub and spoke model that manages a lot of cross-chain connections, because you can like uniformly coordinate and react to these attacks, right? I think imagine if you had like pairwise connections across like half a dozen chains, then half a dozen chains you have to do a lot of like pairwise work. That would be just slower. And so, yeah, I mean, I think overall now we're seeing more liquidity moved into USDC from UST, and so kind of incentives on osmosis has started in USDC and other types of stable assets, and so that migration is probably going to continue throughout the Cosmos ecosystem, because UST was definitely kind of the dominant stable coin. But yeah, and that's what we're seeing now.
Dean?
So While our chain is deployed, our core technology is still on its way out. What I saw is, it is critical for having a large economy to have stable coins, right? I mean, that's the grease that makes real finance and real economies work. And until you have that, you've got a blockchain that's in the barter stage. And we know that a cash economy, a currency economy, just works better. Terra was indeed or rather UST was indeed the main present stable token. But lots of other projects, ours, others, were working on other models for stable tokens to be able to provide, higher assurance, enable, yield farms that are across stable tokens and that sort of thing. So it really drove up, increased interest in that part of our project, which is, we've got a strong focus on how do you build a strong economy, and so I've been working on how to do that stuff for a while. And so, prioritizing that, ramping that up, increasing exposure is one of the consequences here. It's really unfortunate, of course, what happened to people that had their money relying on this infrastructure, but it's just critical that having a robust, stable token across chains is one of the things that is possible and straightforward in Cosmos, and it's something that over the next several months has got to go roll out into the space.
So Jake, I already saw today on Twitter that you guys are launching a 5 million ecosystem fund pretty much to help Terra developers bring to Juno. So I see like you are taking it really as a great opportunity. So what do you see yourself?
I mean, I think it's bullish as AF. I don't know, like it's a really sad thing, and certainly everyone's felt like the pain. But for Juno, it's been great, and we've already heard from so many teams, and a lot of people are, coming over to build on Juno, and that's really exciting. And if you're a Terra dev out there, we've got a $5 million fund from our community to you to come build cool stuff on Juno. So, yeah.
So stepping back, what do you think can be learned, or what are the key takeaways you have from your protocol design, or or overall as a recommendation to other developers, like looking at
like building stablecoins or building like applications on Juno?
I think both. Of course, like we can discuss the stablecoin design, which was not ideal, I would say. So I would say let's stick with Juno for now.
Cool. Well, if you're already building on Terra and not building on top of something like Anchor, it's actually really, really easy to switch over. We're using a newer version of Cosmosm, but it's not that different. You can convert a really complicated Terra smart contract over in like a couple hours, and we have more than enough people to like help you do that if you run into any issues. And then on top of that, you get actually some extra IBC features, which are really cool. So Juno uses Cosmosm and uses the latest version of Cosmosm, which has some really cool low-level things for IBC, allowing you to make cross-chain smart contracts. And you can also do things like launch a CW20 and list it on Osmosis, which is something you really couldn't do on Terra. And a really important thing about Juno is we actually use the standard version of Cosmosm, so the mainline version, and that means if your protocol gets big enough, you can spin up your own app chain really easily. You just, start up a permissioned Cosmosm chain.
So what we are saying is like, there is no, you see it as a really like an opportunity to bring more devs. It's pretty much compatible to what was developed on Terra. Okay, so Sergey, what are your takeaways from the situation?
Yeah, well, I think the key takeaway is that you have to build for the worst. I think that's the reality, right? I think a lot of the time there is a lot of pressure to certain projects to go to market quicker, take certain shortcuts, on security and other things. Don't talk about this or don't talk about that, and I think what this attack has demonstrated that you have to build for the worst, and like all the theoretical things that many people have been talking about for years, like we're going to have a large economic attack, we're going to have a large attack on the validators and things like that, probably will happen more and more often. So I think to me the biggest takeaway is that don't take shortcuts. I think prepare for the worst, plan for the worst, and you have to have the right architecture to deal with those situations. These economic attacks could happen, on any proof of stake token, on any stable coin, and you have to think about like how is your protocol going to react to that, right? And then you have to think about, I think at some point, you know, Terra had to think about, well, what happens if the large validator stake will just be bought by the market by an adversary that starts producing like fake blocks, right, on the Terra chain, and you know, they had to halt everything and so on and so forth. So think about those things in advance and saying, okay, you know, what if a large part of the stake will be, you know, corrupted at some point? What do you do? Like, is there, I don't know, halt mechanism? Do you stop, you know, producing blocks or things like that? I think we need to think a little bit more. The other thing, I think the big takeaway is just cross-chain, you know, protocols, you know, IBC, but also what we're doing with Axeler, really have to be surrounded by safety guard features, okay, which is not really, you know, at Axeler we actually have a number of really nice safeguard features that allows literally just to kind of a pause and resume without having to shut down the validators or connections or relayers. So that was really like smooth, so the network wasn't really affected. But you have to really think about those policies at IBC layer, at your application layer, which so far people took kind of a, you know, the correctness works, let's continue rolling it out as fast as we can. And I think, you know, we have to take a slight pause and rethink some of those assumptions.
So Dean, yesterday in our private conversation you mentioned misbehavior of the Terra validators, which you have observed. And there was no penalty for them in terms of slashing as far as we are aware of. What are the implications for the Agoric design, or do you see any like key takeaways that you can take and implement into Agoric to be more secure?
Okay, so yes, that ties into sort of my follow-up on what these guys were saying. So there were a bunch of teams, folks, heroes that leaped in to analyze what was going on, figure out what was going on, and so they're the ones that surfaced all of this, you know, what's actually happening there, what's going on in consensus. A couple of really positive things that came out of this is, you know, there was an economic meltdown, but the technology underneath all worked, right? It wasn't a bug in the software. It wasn't a failure in consensus. It wasn't, you know, I mean, IBC was working between chains. People were liquidating. Transactions were processing. There was a problem at the economic design that surfaced and could get economically attacked, but the underlying technology worked, and a wide variety of systems sailed through robustly, and then these teams were able to dig in and go, oh, there's sort of interesting other stuff happening here that turns out, you know, would be bad. We should make sure more of that doesn't happen, but it had zero actual impact on the correctness of the execution of Terra, of Osmosis, of Gaia, of, you know, of all these chains. And so that's a real huge result. You know, it's a huge result that we can take the people and the applications that were built on Terra and port them over to Juno, port their economic knowledge over to build in Agoric or build in JavaScript on Agoric. And so you know, for the new devs coming in, there's just an enormous amount that we both, you know, that was both very successful and that we learned from that. And so an example, you know, the safety fuses of making sure that, I mean, in our design of systems, every single, you know, thing that might contribute to your stable token, it's got a debt limit, so it's easy to place limits, have safety fuses that will blow. But when we look at some of these other things, okay, you know, if an oracle hasn't reported in a while, maybe you should stop doing anything that depends on the oracle. And so there's very specific learnings that the community should take out of things that happened, some of which the system was robust against, but it shouldn't have been an issue anyway. Some of which, yeah, people got caught and we could do better. And so we've got some specific ones. You know, the handling of oracle divergence from trading prices and the speed of oracles is one of those, because that's one that's you know, pervasive across a wide variety of systems, and people have safety checks, but where we'll learn a lot to add more of, and that will show up in the Agoric ecosystem and the Agoric economy. That will show up in Juno. That'll show up in cross-chain activity with Osmosis. All those kinds of things. That some of those economic primitives have to be just right. And as I said, correct execution of an algorithm that has economic problems means that indeed we will see economic attacks that will take advantage of those, and so you have to design correctly and test correctly at all levels of your architecture.
And ourselves, we observed, I mean, we are running in Rockaway a Terra validator, and at some point we observed blocks with like 8,000 transactions in the block, which was never seen before. What's your view on the performance like?
So I think the performance was great. I mean, there were places where things got slow and people will learn from it, but some things in scaling large systems you can only discover when you actually scale in deployment, in production in large systems. And so that's one of the things that's awesome is, yes, we were seeing 8,000 transactions and stuff kept ticking. There were long blocks, consensus still worked. There were backed up chains. Things expired and new transactions came through and IBC stayed up and robust and all of these chains kept talking. I mean, that's just an enormous success at the level of complexity of having multiple blockchains in a decentralized fashion, permissionlessly connecting and communicating. And so those numbers, I occasionally rant about, performance of Tendermint versus claim performance of Solana and things like that. Yeah, Tendermint seems to be doing just fine.
Okay.
Yeah, that's 8,000 transactions in a real-life environment, not simulated in a lab,
Right.
real network conditions. But it was great. And I think we can do better, and I think it's important to continue to move forward and make sure we're funding public goods on which this is all built. Make sure we're funding core development and performance. And there's still a lot of work to do there. Cosmos Builders Foundation is launching soon. There's a lot of other efforts, and it's important as chains that we all continue to support those efforts.
So we have seen this. We have had this observation that the Terra performance was okay. Does that also apply to your protocols and Axelar especially?
Yeah, no, it was fine. I mean, we actually had more traffic from Terra in the earlier days when some incentives had become announced. Everybody just rushes, and you have thousands of transactions per hour sometimes, where people just try to leverage these incentive rewards. We saw definitely increased traffic. Nothing that affected Axelar. So I think, yeah, kind of the technology worked. I think Tendermint worked, IBC worked. Yeah, some things expired, and it required a lot of coordination from the whole ecosystem to keep things up throughout the week. But yeah, I think the technology largely worked quite fine.
So we have been, according to Nansen, statistics of weekly active addresses, Terra was on the 8th place in the overall landscape of layer 1s with 150,000 weekly active users. Where do you think now will the developers migrate and build and together with the users?
So there's developers and then there's users, traders, what have you. Developers, we go back to, right, Terra is CosmWasm. They're going to discover that there are a bunch of other chains in the Cosmos ecosystem that really would be delighted to have their help, and that they've developed relevant expertise that would be especially useful to all the activity in Juno. But all of their trading and business and logic and expertise of the, hundreds of applications that people built on Terra that had nothing to do with this, those are all portable, and that expertise, is portable, and most of those people that build in Rust and compile to WASM, yeah, they know JavaScript as well, and they can come over and build on Agoric too. And so, there's plenty of opportunity for developers, and nowhere near enough of that expertise. As for users, some of those are traders, and they've got plenty of trading venues. They'll move around. They'll move to to Juno, to Osmosis, to Evmos, to Solana, to various things. But I think that the speed with which the Cosmos ecosystem can adapt and recover is going to be a big attractor to keep those users in the Cosmos ecosystem. And these chains are now economically connected. We all benefit from them being on a neighboring chain and still driving business to that overall ecosystem. So,
okay. And Jake, so we identified Juno could be one of the best platforms to migrate the application from Terra. Well, in addition to the ecosystem fund, how are you planning to help the developers get onboarded?
I mean, we just have a really engaging, awesome community, including a community of amazing developers, and just, join our Discord channels. People will answer your questions. You could join the DAO Discord. There's a bunch of really great CosmWasm developers in there, and they'll help you because we're a really close, awesome community. I think it's pretty simple. Reach out. I mean, my DMs are open. If you're a Terra developer looking for a home or having questions about how you might migrate your protocol, we're happy to talk. And in general, people are just insanely supportive in the forums. We also have Hack Juno, which is another competition that's going on. So we have got the dev fund, but there's also Hack Juno, which I think currently has like 1.7 million in prizes. So, and that's like happening this month. It ends June 16th. So, you know, go out and build some cool stuff, and maybe you'll get a Hack Juno prize on top of a Terra Dev Fund grant.
Dean, would you add to
Well,
like
this is
something?
also a little bit responsive to another thing. The other thing I'd like to see funded by multiple of our Chains Community Fund, you know, and or folks is we talked about what are the lessons learned. There's a lot of experts out there at DevOps that really can do Splunking. Several of them have already dug in and learned things, but this is a really powerful, you know, there's lots of audit trails and evidence, that's what blockchain gives you, for us to really understand what's going on at the performance level, at, you know, economic level, consensus, you know, all of these levels where if someone cares about the consensus technology, which Cosmos, again, has lots of projects that are leading the way in improving consensus, you know, I really would like to see the community retrospective out of this from a technical point of view of additional lessons for IBC and connectivity that we can all learn. So.
Okay.
I love that point so much. And I just want to throw out there, Strangelove Ventures has this tool called IBC Testing Framework, and you could run these kinds of simulations inside that to like really, do that retrospective as a community. That's so important.
Strangelove, Occlusion, you know, the Osmosis, the IBC gang, all of these teams have really dug in, and you know, so that's why I was feeling nervous when you talked about leaders, because man, that is technical leadership.
Okay. So I think we have a lot of new developers in the audience. So I think it would make sense to step back and pretty much elaborate on why would a developer choose to build on Agoric or Axelar or Juno. So if you guys can go one by one and explain the value prop, because I think it's really important to pretty much be able to communicate properly, like who is your target developer.
Sure. So I'll start. Agoric is a layer 1 chain built on Cosmos SDK. The compelling technical thing for developers is you can build smart contracts in a hardened version of JavaScript. I've been working on smart contracts since pre-blockchain. We've got a whole team of people that have been doing this for a long time. And you know, the part of the mantra is if you're going to get out to get millions of developers to be able to build this stuff, we have to meet them where they're at. And in the same way that React changed the world of how easy it was to build composable user interfaces, we do the same kind of thing for composable smart contracts so that you can rapidly put together interesting DeFi, interesting NFT, interesting future applications for the next generation of smart contracts on blockchain. And so that's, you know, 10 million developers out there, no JavaScript. The way we're going to reach the broad mainstream world is by enabling them to safely and rapidly build new stuff, and that's what Agoric's all about.
On Axelar, I heard there is a lot of misconception that you guys are a bridge, where you are generally a dev platform to build multi-chain apps. And I think, Sergey, it's really important to address this.
Yeah, well, I think most people don't know how to even define a bridge. So let's define it first, right? Like, what is a bridge? It's like most of the time it's like a pairwise connection, right? That's used to like transfer assets, right? And I think what we're trying to do with Axelar is build something beyond that to provide really the secure, robust cross-chain sort of transport layer, right? And that has all kinds of properties from being able to transfer assets to just general contract calls, right? And like being able to send state and programs from one chain to another, and so on and so forth, and do it in really efficient way where with effective routing, with effective translation across different stacks like IBC, VM, Bitcoin, and so on and so forth. So that's really the big definition, kind of a pairwise token transfer versus like many-to-many general cross-chain communication protocols, right? And that's what we're trying to do. And kind of what we're really focusing on with the Axelar stack is really empowering developers to choose the best platform for their needs to build their applications, right? Whether or not it's Agoric or Juno and anything else. But while building there, you still want to be able to compose and interact with everybody else, right? So through a Cosmos ecosystem, you can interact with IBC, how to interact with other chains. That's what we're offering and building the pipelines for that. From a developer perspective, I think everything is going to transition to a cross-chain and multi-chain future. So the way you build your application, the way you design it, really has to have that in mind. Otherwise, you're going to be behind all the other projects that are building right now in this cross-chain environment. It's a no-brainer because when you think about it, you need to have access to all the users of the ecosystem, right, as opposed to users from one single chain. And so
Yeah.
this robust cross-chain kind of communication, transport layers allow you to have distribution, allow you to have reachability to all the applications, all the users in the space, and you're not building, in a closed environment and just focusing on, the users that are like early token holders or participants of that ecosystem. So I think that's really powerful, where you now can decide, like, what is technically the best platform, right, to build my smart contract? Like, what language do I need? What finality properties do I need? But still being able to compose and interact with everyone else across the ecosystem. That's what I'm excited about, and that's what we're building Axelar for.
Yeah. So I think would make also sense to add, like, in addition to bridging, also the messaging could apply to a scenario, for example, where when you can have like a native multi-chain application. Like, for example, you post the collateral into contract on one chain and you take a loan on another chain.
Exactly.
So I think
Yeah.
that could be also like expressed in like Axelar.
Yes, I do want to point out that in IBC, the interchain account stuff is rolling out quickly, and that's that is empowering to exactly that sort of application where a smart contract on Agoric could drive Akash to manage, allocations of the work on the Akash network, or cause a trade on Osmosis, or take a liquidity position, or hand an asset off to Juno and something happens on Juno. But that interchain accounts is an application protocol on IBC. It's great to see another application protocol rolling out that really will enable a new class of cross-chain applications.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to bridge that stuff over Axelar just makes the reach even broader, of course.
Yeah, and on that, actually, we're working on a couple of projects with a couple of teams to compose, right, interchain accounts with contract calls like on EVM chains, right?
Nice.
So imagine the power then you're building, on Cosmos somewhere, and you can actually talk to EVM chains, and EVM chains can talk to your application, right, on Cosmos. And so this is really where Axelar does this sort of translation layer, that it needs to parse the messages. So I think, everything is going to be unified, everything is going to be connected, and just think ahead what's best for your application and prepare for this future.
So Jake, I'm not a Terra developer, and I was a C++ developer once. Why should or what would be the best way to start for me building on Juno?
If you're a front-end developer, just again, join the community. The best reason to build on Juno is we've got the best community in crypto. It's one of the most active, DAOs effectively. We have such high turnout for voter engagement on our proposals. The community is willing to just ape into everything.
And
I mean that in the most loving
documentation,
way possible.
though?
What you should do is just join the community and see what projects are out there. Obviously, if you know some Rust or are willing to learn some Rust, it's a great language. Stack Overflow's most loved language, 7 years in a row. Try it, you'll love it, Rust. But I think another great reason to build on Juno is it's actually, if you do have the aspiration of launching your own Cosmos chain someday, and we're in a Cosmos conference, so you want to launch your own L1, it's the best way to do that.
If you are coming from the Rust background, right, you have the choice of Solana on other chains. You can also do Juno.
Yeah,
so
but
what's
on
the
Solana, you can't have the roadmap of launching your own chain. You can start out on Juno, take advantage of our really awesome community, get product market fit, and then launch your own L1 that you don't have to share with anyone and doesn't go down when you inconveniently, don't want it to because someone dropped some monkeys. It's the roadmap to having your own chain is there with Juno, and it's not there if you build on something like Solana. Then you're just stuck on Solana VC chain forever.
VC chain, okay. So, thank you guys for sharing your thoughts. Now we will have a time for questions from the audience.
All right. Yeah. Thank you, guys. I think this was a blast. And actually, we have just time for one question because we're running out of time a little bit. If you have any questions and they're very urgent, just go ahead and ask the speakers and the panel participants during the coffee breaks or during the lunchtime. We have the time for that. But one question, and this question is actually for you, Dean. It's, has this collapse changed Agoric's plan for Run stablecoin? Are you thinking about a stable not pegged to a government currency?
Okay, so first, Run was the name of our stablecoin. It has been since renamed to Inter, and there will be a discussion about it later on. It was always in our plans to build it as the grease for the economy on, to quickly and easily function on top of the Agoric platform. And so the fact that you can use assets over IBC to provide collateral to that means that it can be valuable across the interchain ecosystem, and we're certainly excited in exploring that. It hasn't actually changed our release process. It's changed perhaps the extent to which we're doing economic stress tests and external security audits and that kind of thing, and reviewing to make sure that it's as robust as possible in the face of these economic attacks. But the nice thing is, this is what we were doing anyway. It's the right thing to do in order to enable a real growing economy that people can, build fast and earn fast. And so it just made it more urgent to do what we're doing. And the one more thing is, so it took our project, and now we're really much more interested in inviting people outside of Agoric, and we expect Inter to have, Inter will have a life outside of Agoric, and so much of the governance, much of the economic advice, those kinds of things will be coming from the best experts we can find that aren't responsible to the Agoric chain. Agoric will benefit from that level of engagement in the community. And so we're excited about that, and there'll be discussion about it later.
Yeah, looking forward to this discussion. And once again, thank you, Jake. Thank you, Sergey. Thank you, Dean. And thank you, Dusan. A big applause, please.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for coming.